Megan, thanks for doing this. I was telling you offline. I've been wanting to have to speak with you for a few years now, and things happen when they're supposed to happen, and I'm just very appreciative that you're coming on and talking to me. So thank you.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. I'm glad that we were able to connect finally.
You were somebody that you've experienced the cancel culture before it was fashionable to be part of cancel culture.
I sure did. I think I'm the most canceled person in Canada. I've
Congratulations,
been,
Megan. By the way.
I know, where's my plaque, eh? Um, I was there was the left was petitioning to have me fired from my job back in 2015. And then it sort of never stopped since then. Things got really bad in around 2016, 2017 when I started speaking out against gender identity ideology. I was almost the only woman in Canada speaking out against this and in defense of women-only spaces and women's sex-based rights and saying, blasphemous things like men aren't women and refusing to call men she and so on and so forth. And I testified against the Canadian gender identity legislation, which was Bill C-16 back then. And yeah, again, I was almost the only one in Canada saying these things, and I was blacklisted by the media. I've been protested everywhere I go, every time I speak anywhere in Canada and, internationally as well. I've been obviously threatened, harassed, stalked, and every time we've tried to organize an event where I and others can speak out about these issues, we lose our venue. Um, it's never stopped. I mean, and as far as I'm concerned, Canada is just the worst on this.
Has the level of, in terms of cancellation, the venom towards you, the death threats, has that simmered down at all? Or where is it at now compared to where it was?
I think the threats have simmered down because I think that the conversation has opened up. So there's more pushback against gender identity ideology than there was when I first started speaking out. So I was a very easy target when I first started speaking publicly about this because I was just one person. I was just an independent journalist, an independent writer, an independent podcaster. I had no power. I had no political power, financial power, nothing. There's nobody to protect me. It's just me kind of out there on my own. And people could do or say whatever they wanted. And in fact, be supported in that. The hatred against me that continues to exist in, woke cities like Vancouver. Things perhaps have changed in America and lots of places in America. But and certainly things have changed online in terms of that conversation. I think in large part to Elon Musk buying X and opening up free speech on that platform. But in Vancouver, the hatred towards me was so strong that there was no pushback, and I think people really believed that I deserve it, and things got really scary for me in Vancouver and in the neighborhood that I was living in, which is East Van, which is where I'm now running as a People's Party of Canada candidate. I was just scared to be out in public. There was lots of places that I wouldn't go or I wouldn't go without my boyfriend at the time. And, I was stalked around my neighborhood. I was screamed at. I was threatened. Um, and of course, eventually I left. I've been in Mexico for 4 years, and I do go back and forth. I've maintained my residency in Canada. But there's no way I would ever live there again. I wouldn't for safety reasons. And I was genuinely concerned about the Canadian government coming after me.
But yeah, people don't realize you're a one man when you're a one man band like this, and you're being threatened, and to the point where it's real. Like shit is real. Like it's not just some DM through social media and whatnot. And you have to. And no one comes to save you to provide you security, or you have to do all of that yourself. And people can't grasp like the situation.
No, I think people assume that if you have a big platform or you're famous in some way that that comes with money, but it doesn't. If, like, I mean, I obviously am making a living, but I don't have money to pay for a security team or something like that. Again, I've maintained my independence all these years for a reason, and that's because I want the freedom to produce the kind of work that I want to produce and say what I want to say and talk to whoever I want to talk to and do things my way. So I'm grateful for that. But I'm not wealthy. And yeah, like you say, I mean, it puts me in a really vulnerable position, especially in places like Canada where, I'm not just dissenting against popular progressive ideology. I'm dissenting against the government. I'm on the wrong side of everybody in Canada that has any kind of power.
And you're going against a system here too, which is, you know, so I don't know about you, but I get so annoyed with people like in my regular day life because they're what I like to refer to as blissfully unaware.
Yeah.
Like they don't realize how, what our governments have done to us and how they've turned against the people. And yet people are just so blissfully unaware, Megan. Like as long as they have their yoga mats and their lattes, like
I know. It's really depressing because what we saw during COVID really should have woken people up to the, precarious place that their rights were in. Again, especially in Canada. I mean, we witnessed authoritarianism throughout the COVID scam in Canada, and those mandates and those lockdowns and those, the removal of our charter rights, essentially, of our free speech, of our right to protest, gather in public, freedom of movement, so on, bodily autonomy, you know, we lost all those and they weren't coming back until the Freedom Convoy protested. And, that was the first inspiring thing I'd seen come out of Canada in decades. And I was surprised. I didn't think Canadians had it in them, to be honest. But they did. And those people who were regular working class Canadians, that was a legal, peaceful protest, despite the media propaganda and propaganda coming from the left, calling these people, dangerous terrorists. It's not true. This was a peaceful, legal protest. And, some of those people involved are in jail. Some of them are still tied up in court. Tamara Leach and Chris Barber, who were leaders of the Freedom Convoy, have been in court all this time and were recently charged with mischief. The court couldn't find anything real to charge them with, so they charged them with mischief. And that mischief charge is based on, according to the judge, um, these Tamara and Chris encouraging people to stay at the protest or join the protest, which is, of course, what you would do if you were organizing a protest. That's not an illegal thing to do. And they're trying to put them in jail for 2 years. The sentencing hasn't happened yet, but what they're trying to do is put them in a federal penitentiary for 2 years. And of course, the Canadian government invoked the Emergencies Act, which has never been done before in history, in order to do this, to shut down the protests and criminalize people, but also to freeze the bank accounts of Canadians who were involved in the convoy and Canadians who had supported the convoy. I got an email from someone today who told me that she was living in Ontario at the time and she donated $50 to the convoy and they froze her bank account. She's now living in the US.
they froze her bank account for donating $50 to the convoy.
Yeah, and they did that to hundreds of people who donated.
This episode is brought to you by McElvaney Financial Group. Their advisors bring a depth of knowledge and experience that allow them to serve their clientele with care, ensuring their financial needs are met now and in the future. Personally, I'm not saying cash is worthless, but you can see what's happening. It's worth less every year. Gold is the opposite. Click on the promo link in the show notes or go to www.mcelvaney.com/coffeeandamike. And that's the other thing too, is like, well, that happened to you recently.
Yeah, so I mentioned earlier that I'm running for the People's Party of Canada in East Vancouver. And the day that my candidacy was confirmed by Elections Canada, I discovered without, any communication from the bank or from the government that my bank account was frozen. I discovered because a transfer wasn't going through to my bank account. And so I called the bank to figure out why, what was going on. And they informed me that my bank account was frozen. They wouldn't tell me why. I asked them if they could tell me, at least send me something in writing saying your bank account's frozen. They refused to do that. They finally, I had to call back again to try to get more information. And they said that they'd been directed to by the government. And I was like, well, can you show me or send me what the government sent you? And they said no. So I called the government over and over and over again and couldn't get through, and nobody returned my calls, and I was given the runaround. And, eventually I was just like, fuck this. Like, and went public with it. I was just sort of done after like a week of trying to get any answers from anyone, which I couldn't. I have no idea what's going on still. I don't know. I can't say for sure that this is politically motivated, but to me it seems suspect. And either way, randomly freezing the bank accounts. This is my only Canadian bank account. I'm lucky that I have an American bank account because I started moving my finances over to America during COVID because I was very worried about what was happening with the Canadian government and I didn't trust them. I was like, they are going to mess with me for sure. I'm pulling out. So thank God that I did that. But it's still, I still am. I still use that Canadian bank account for things. I still need it for things like paying bills and paying rent in Vancouver. And, my YouTube payments go into that account. So I can't access that anymore. If I didn't have my US account, I would have been screwed for a week. Like, for all they know, for all Van City knows, for all the government knows, I don't have any other bank account and I'm starving. I can't pay my rent. I can't buy groceries. I have zero access to money. And this is what they're doing to other Canadians as well. It's not just me. It's so draconian and sick.
They don't need to send people with ARs to your door anymore. They just do this and they'll just starve you out.
For sure. And when I left Canada during COVID, I left Canada in January 2021 because I was, concerned about these mandates. And, this vaccine mandate was coming. They were talking about shutting down the borders. And I was like, I'm getting out of here. I'm going to get stuck here and they're going to put me in jail.
Let me interrupt you, Megan. Let
And
me interrupt you for a
yeah.
second. Because when you were going through that thought process, what was the moment where you're like, fuck it, I'm out of here?
Um, I don't know if there was a moment, but I saw things getting worse and the lockdowns were continuing. And yeah, they were talking about these vaccine mandates. And I just, the government was not letting up. And I just saw myself getting trapped in Canada. And as a, you know, political dissident, one of the few political dissidents in Canada. And this is my work, right? Like it's not just me saying things online, although of course it's wrong and psychotic and dangerous that any Canadian would be shut down online for dissenting from government policy, but or challenging the government in any way. But this is what I do. This is what I write about, and this is what I'm talking about on the podcast. And, I was worried that I wouldn't be able to work anymore. And again, I was almost 100% sure that I was going to end up in one of these human rights tribunals for so-called hate speech for, challenging the vaccine mandates or challenging the lockdowns or refusing to say that, men can become women or something. I've been a target for so long. And clearly the government was like using these methods and planning to, continue to double down on these methods to criminalize dissenting Canadians. Justin Trudeau has been trying to pass this bill in Canada, Bill C-63, which would, crack down on online hate speech and would do exactly the thing that I'm talking about now. So it would allow regular individuals to report other individuals for online hate speech and, potentially force them through this human rights tribunal, which could result in huge fines, tens of thousands of dollars, house arrest, and maybe even jail time. And yeah, I was like, I'm getting out of here before it's too late. I wasn't necessarily planning on staying in Mexico forever. I sort of was like, I'm leaving and I'll see how things go. And things just kept getting worse. So I stayed. And then the convoy happened and they started freezing these people's bank accounts. And I was like, yeah, there's no way I'm going back to this country. And so, yeah, I started trying to set things up for myself in the US to protect myself from that particular kind of vulnerability. And thank God I did, because I would be completely screwed. And, again, I'm not a rich person. I didn't have money in that bank account. There's not really anything for them to seize. And it's just the most draconian kind of punitive thing to do to somebody. And it's amazing to me that so many Canadians don't see it, don't care, think everything's fine, think everything's great, act like they're living in fear of, Donald Trump and Elon Musk. And like, your country is screwed right now. There are a lot of very serious problems in your country. You're losing your rights, your freedoms, your democracy, your free speech, and all you can do is obsess over the president of another country that really doesn't have all that much impact on you. I mean, Canadians would be so lucky to become the 51st state. I don't believe that's a serious thing that Trump is proposing, but they should be so lucky.
What went into making the decision to move to Mexico, and were there any other countries that you considered?
No, I mean, I came here because I love it here. I mean, the town that I'm living in, I've been coming to for many years. And, I'm here because I don't want to be in Canada, but I'm here because I love it. I love Mexico. I love Mexicans. I love my friends here. I love my community here. I
So you
love
knew
freedom.
people, you had people there that you knew already, so you were kind of,
No, not really.
oh,
I just made friends. I'm pretty good at making friends.
yeah.
It's an easy place to meet people. But it's a small town. So, I have a community, which does not exist in Vancouver. And I people are not obsessed with politics. My friends don't have all the same views as me, and it really doesn't matter. That's not what we talk about, which is certainly not the case in Canada. In Canada, it seems like all anybody wants to talk about is in politics, and this determines all of their friendships, and they refuse to even engage with someone who sees things differently than them. And I don't know. People in Canada to me just seem miserable, and they don't really realize it because they're so used to it. They're so used to living this way, and they think it's normal and that there's no other way. And I always just want to shake people out of their bubbles and their slumbers. It's like, go somewhere else. Like, talk to people who are different than you. The whole world is not like this. That's how I felt during COVID too. It was so strange to be somewhere where there were no mandates and no lockdowns, and everybody was living as always and everything was fine. People were not dropping dead. Like, everything was cool and everything was great actually. And meanwhile, these people are in Canada locked in their condos with masks on in their cars and ratting out their neighbors for having their sister over for dinner or whatever. And, it was just lunacy.
Yeah, and I still see people wearing. I see more masks now as of late than
Really?
yeah, yeah. I'm just glad they're wearing them because it just knows that I never want to talk to those people.
Yeah.
That's my attitude now. There's a guy at the gym. He puts his mask on. He's already in the gym and he puts it on before he comes into like the weights.
Good Lord. Where is it that you're located?
Phoenix.
Oh, good Lord.
Yeah. Yeah.
Insane.
But with that, I was just kind of bitching about with one of my neighbors how people drive these days, and like everybody's glued to their phones and not paying attention and whatnot. And I think to myself, maybe this is just showing our decay in our society. And it sounds to me like that's what's happening in Canada too, right? You're just seeing the deterioration of society.
Yeah, I mean, I think people have lost sight of what matters. What matters in life is your relationships with people, your friendships, your family, your community. And people in Canada, I think or, I shouldn't, not all people in Canada. There's a lot of people in Canada who are really upset about what's going on. But I'll say, a lot of people in these progressive urban centers, particularly like Vancouver, again, I feel like they're just kind of they're obsessed with their things and their comforts. And like you said earlier, it's like, oh well, I've got my condo and my Netflix and my Amazon deliveries and my fancy yoga studio and I can go to the wine bar sometimes, not that often because we're all broke and our rent is exorbitant. But you know, I've got all my stuff, so everything's good, right? Everything's good, and I keep telling myself, and all of our friends keep telling ourselves that everything's good. We're so lucky to be here, and
It's going to get better. It's
um,
going to get better. It's going to get better. Somebody else will take care of it and it'll get better.
yeah, if I keep voting for these progressive parties that destroyed the economy and the city I live in, things will surely improve.
So if you end up winning, you're going to have to move back?
To Canada, I
Yeah.
won't win. I'm running in an NDP riding, which so the NDP is our left-wing party. The riding that I'm running in, which is a neighborhood that I lived in for a very long time in Vancouver, is an NDP stronghold. It's a very left-wing riding. So there's no chance of me winning there. I'm running to push a conversation that won't happen otherwise and to support the People's Party of Canada, which is the only freedom-oriented populist party in Canada. Maxime Bernier, who's the party leader, was the only party leader in Canada to speak out against all the mandates, to support the convoy, to challenge gender identity ideology. He's pushing back against many other, sacred cows in Canada, including mass immigration. But, I stopped voting in Canada in 2015 because I was like, I'm not, all of these parties are terrible. None of these parties represent my interests, so I won't vote. And I was very happy when the PPC came along, and I was like, great, finally there's a candidate I can vote for. I don't care if she wins or not. Um, but I want to feel good about the person that I'm casting my vote for. So I want people in this riding to have that option too. And yeah, I mean, these conversations about gender identity ideology, sovereignty, actual bodily autonomy, free speech are just never, never, never going to happen in this riding unless somebody forces it. So that's my goal. But no, there's no chance that I'm going to win. So we don't have to worry about that.
Yeah, I had Maxim on a couple of weeks ago, and I just saw he was on my friend Matt Smith and Doug Casey's show that just went up a couple hours ago.
Okay.
Great guy. I
Yeah,
connected with
he's
him. I love
great.
to run. He loves to run, so we have kind of had that instant connection. But
Yeah, I
he
mean, I really like him a lot as a person too. I did an event with him last year in Nanaimo, and he's, a very warm, nice person. He's very supportive of me, and yeah, I really appreciate his values and the party platform.
How do you feel the messaging and are people waking up more than when you started all this and when you connected with him and the party?
I don't know. It's hard to say. I mean, it's crazy to me that the Liberal Party still has any support at all, and they have a lot of support in Canada still. I mean, after what they did to Canadians in Canada, the party was dead in the water in December. Trudeau was, I think, probably the most unpopular prime minister in Canadian history, and it looked like the Liberal Party was done. And then he pulled this switcheroo on us, and he pretended to resign. He didn't actually resign. He announced that he would be resigning and then prorogued Parliament, which was to avoid being ousted. He was avoiding a vote of non-confidence, and he would have been forced into resignation. An election would have been called as a result. So he prorogued Parliament instead for almost 3 months, and they appointed this new leader, Mark Carney, who's never been elected to anything by the Canadian public. He's a globalist banker, part of Trudeau's team for many years, and installed him. And Canadians were like, oh, new guy. Okay, cool. We can support the Liberal Party again. I'm like, this is just the same thing. Like, why would you vote for a party that ruined the Canadian economy, that has ruined Canada, that took away your rights, your charter rights, that treated regular working class Canadians in this way? It's the Liberal Party's fault that people can't afford groceries in Canada. it's baffling to me. And it's, who knows how much you can trust the polls, but according to the polls, the Liberal Party is doing very well in Canada. So that makes me, yeah, pretty depressed about how awake Canadians are to what's going on. I really think they've been swept up in this anti-Trump rhetoric that the Liberal Party leaned into.
Well, and then the whole focus is what, get Trudeau out, get Trudeau out, get Trudeau out, and once he's gone, people don't even bother to see, all right, who's coming in behind him? Who is this person?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
What do you think the odds are that Carney stays in his position with the election coming up?
I don't know. I mean, I still think, I mean, Pierre Poilievre, who's the leader of the Conservative Party, was really, really popular prior to all this happening, beginning in January. That's when Trudeau announced his resignation. And he's lost a lot of that popularity since, in part, I think, because he's leaning to the middle, like he's playing it too safe. I thought this was, going to be the next populist leader, and he was going to bring about like real change and speak to Canadians who wanted that real change. And that's really dropped off for him. I think he's been trying to play it safe when I think he should be going in the other direction. I don't think that he should be engaging in this anti-American, anti-Trump rhetoric. And I think he should be leaning into challenging things like gender identity ideology and, mass immigration. And I think that he should be supporting the convoy and being really open about opposing the authoritarianism that happened during COVID in Canada. And he's not really doing any of that. He's not talking about free speech. And it just makes me worried, but I think he's lost popularity because of that. It's like, well, you're just, what's the difference between you and the Liberal Party then? If you're not that much different than the Liberal Party, then why wouldn't people just vote Liberal? Who's there to speak to all these Canadians who want to see their country saved from, online censorship, for example, and from the economy getting even worse.
Yeah, that's my biggest fear, even in America, because I had Tom Morozzo on a couple of days. It's a Canada week, Megan. This is my somebody. Tom Morozzo would put a post on an X saying, instead of inquiring in Canada, why don't you reach out to fellow Canadians to find out what's going on there? And so this is just timing that you also came on this week. But my biggest concern, even here in America, is as long as technology continues to advance, and the media, it's just so easy for them to suppress things and push you down certain lanes to where the information is it's just so controlled what you're seeing.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and this is part of the problem in Canada is that so not only are people not, engaging with people outside their bubble in the outside world, but in their online world, they're only seeing the exact same thing over and over again. Their algorithms, they're just being shown things that support the positions that they already have. And so it really warps their worldview. They think everybody sees things like they do, and that's just not true. And their views are never really challenged by anyone. And if they are, it's like, oh, that's a crazy person, or this person is doing hate speech, or, this guy's a bigot, or a racist, or a transphobe, or Islamophobic, or whatever it is. And it just has made everything a lot worse. And, yeah, I just think so many Canadians are living in la la land.
What is your level of faith in the election systems in Canada?
Um, that's a good question. I mean, I don't think that the elections are rigged, if that's what you're asking. I think that, I have faith that these are legitimate elections. I don't have faith in voters, I suppose.
So you're yeah. So you have more faith in the process than you do in the people at this point.
I mean, I think that the elections in Canada are legitimate elections, but I think that the parties and the government are very good at propagandizing people, very good at propagandizing people. They own the media. Most of the media in Canada is government funded, and they work for the Liberal Party, and they're going to continue to do that because they want their funding. If the Liberal Party don't win, those media organizations, institutions lose their funding and cease to exist. People are not people are not interested in watching the CBC in the way that they were 20 years ago. They exist because of government funding. And so, what they pump out is pro-liberal propaganda. They toe the party line.
Do you think some of that though, with people still following some of that media, is like the boomer generation that haven't come
For
to
sure.
grips or don't realize like it's a different time. This is not 20 years ago.
Yeah, they're still stuck in their politics from, the 70s, 80s, 90s, right? And they still think that the progressive parties that they're supporting and that these media institutions are doing good. They think that they're supporting, equality and that they're interested in protecting the environment and they're against these corporate power and war and all this stuff that maybe they were fighting back in the day, and they haven't realized that things have switched and that the left are now the authoritarians, and that they're not working for the working class. They're attacking the working class. In fact, they're going after the working class, and they're opposed to free speech and, this climate change hysteria that's been forced down people's throat is bullshit. They yeah, and I don't know that those boomers, I don't know that they're gonna change. They're comfortable in their ways and they're comfortable in their houses and they're retired and they've got all their stuff and their bubbles are even smaller.
Isn't that where the huge disconnect is between the boomers and the Gen Zers?
Yeah, I mean, it's been good to see that the younger generations seem to have woken up to this a lot and, that they are supporting parties that aren't pushing these woke ideologies. But yeah, there is a big divide. And if you talk to these boomers, they really it's really strange because they really do assume that everybody agrees with them. They won't know who I am and they'll be talking shit about Trump voters and things like that. And I'll be like, because they just assume because they think, oh, she's Canadian and she looks, she's white and she looks middle class. So she's like me, I guess. And I'm not middle class, by the way. I grew up working class. And they'll be like, oh, this person probably voted for Trump, which of course means that they're like stupid and sexist and racist and evil and bad. And they have no idea that I voted for Trump. And they can't fathom that anybody wouldn't see things their way. It's strange.
I can't even. I try to, even boomers on the right here. Some of them, it just, the Fox News people. It's like, guys, this is a different time. I talk about college, and because my friend Matt Smith is writing a book about his son in academia, and I don't see the value in a college degree today because you're going to spend a ton of money. They don't teach you anything,
Yeah.
and boomers are like Fox News, college, college experience. It's like,
Yeah.
yeah, it's a different time now. This is not 1990.
No, I mean, it's not going to do anything for you except maybe get you in a lot of debt. I mean, I guess if your parents are financing it, then fine. But if you want a job, that's not the way to go. And no, they're not learning anything. They're being indoctrinated by these political ideologies. When I did a BA and a master's degree in women's studies, which, while I was in the women's studies department, became gender sexuality in women's studies. It was around that time, I think 2010 or something like that, 2009, when all the women's studies departments started becoming gender studies department, and they started writing the word woman out of all of the course content and replacing it with the word gender. It just became, postmodern studies, and it was all gender theory. But yeah, they're taught about, post-colonialism and gender theory and, everything, you know, modern day Canada and Western civilization is all bad and evil. And, they're taught about these hierarchies of oppression and intersectionality and all of that stuff, that they're being indoctrinated into politics, right? They're not learning how to think critically, which at least that would be good if you're going to be in the arts and humanities, at least, you could be taught how to think and you could be exposed to a diversity of literature, but that's not what's happening.
When you started all this and the hate started flooding in, I mean, was anybody in your family? I mean, what was their response to this, or did anybody try to stop you or try to talk you out of it?
Yeah, lots of people tried to talk me out of it. People have always tried to talk me out of everything. I mean, I've had to fight my whole life just to do what I do. I mean, it's like, is it really worth it? Like, isn't this stressful? Like, why do you have to say this? Like, why can't you just be nice? Like, why do you even have to talk about this? And it's like, it's my nature, my personality is not the kind of person who's gonna play along or pretend. I want to speak the truth and I want to say what I think, and I'm not gonna watch as the country falls apart, and I'm not going to be quiet while I watch people lie in front of my face about something as insane as biological sex. And when I see the erosion of our rights and freedoms and of civil liberties, that's a really, really big deal, and it's a really dangerous thing. I mean, of course, I don't want to see Canada descend into communism, although I think that's what's happening. Um, but yeah, I mean, this is the attitude of so many Canadians. It's like, well, why do you have to cause all this controversy and chaos? Like as though it's me, like as though it's my fault for being attacked and protested and harassed and deplatformed and demonetized and censored and all of that because I want to say that men can't become women and that I don't think that children should be sterilized and mutilated because somebody told them they were born in the wrong body. It's my fault for saying this is bullshit and this is dangerous. So, like it's my fault that I'm being protested and threatened and harassed and so on and persecuted and so on and so forth because I should have just kept my mouth shut. Like that's the real attitude of a lot of Canadians, and it's unbelievable to me.
Well, the other thing is too, when somebody asks you that, my first thought is, all right, well then who's going to do it? If Megan doesn't do
Exactly.
it,
I did it because nobody else was. I was like, nobody else is going to do this. I guess I'm going to be the one that has to do it. So I did.
so you can go back to your yoga and your lattes, and Megan will do it.
Yeah. Yeah. And you guys can all pretend that I'm the bad guy. And you guys are the good guys. Got all your stuff. You've got your money. These people all make more money than I do too, mind you. Like I think they like to tell themselves that I'm a grifter. I'm doing it for the money and so on and so forth. And it's like you guys all make about like 4 or 5 times more money than I do. Like you've got your financial security, and that's a big part of the reason why people don't say things too. They're worried about losing social status, but they're worried about their stuff and their money. And I took every risk in the world in order to say these things. And again, they tell themselves, "Oh, yeah, she's causing controversy because she makes money." It's like, no, that's not what's happening. Actually, actually, I've suffered a lot and continue to. I mean, I'm happy. Don't get me wrong. Like I love my life and I feel super grateful actually, and just thrilled at my choice and what I've done in my life. But I took a lot of risks to do this.
Could you imagine though? Like, yeah, you might be making more money in a corporate job, but then you sit there in that cubicle, Megan, and it fucking sucks your soul out every
Yeah.
day.
I don't want to be miserable. I'd rather be poor and happy and feel good about myself, have my integrity intact.
Yeah, people, it's that's what this is what they do. You go to college now. I mean, times have changed, but you go into debt, and then you're a slave. Then you go get a job that you don't want to do because you got to pay it back, finance a car, credit cards, whatever, and you just sit at that cubicle every day waiting for 5 o'clock. Sunday night you have the blues because you don't want to go to work Monday. I mean, who wants to spend their life? I don't want to spend my life like that.
Hell, hell. You only live once. I mean, as far as I know, maybe I'm wrong, but I mean, if I'm wrong, great. But like, as far as I know, you only live once, and I'm not wasting my life being miserable and, telling lies and pretending to be somebody that I'm not. I want everything out of life, and I want to be happy, and I want to, do the best I can.
You're somebody in my short time that I've known you is I think the saying "life isn't a straight line." I think that applies here. Can you believe as we sit here April 25 with I would say, and you tell me if you agree or disagree, is this the most important election for Canada?
Yeah, for sure. This is a game changer. Um, and I hope that something really drastic changes. I don't know if it will. I mean, if the Liberals get voted back into power, Canada is done. And I know a lot of people who will probably leave like I did. A lot of people have asked me, how do you move to Mexico? I'm like, I don't know. I just came here and figured it out and didn't go back to Canada. So don't know if there's any real strategy there, but or people are looking into moving to the US. But and I would recommend that. Honestly, if the Liberal Party wins, get out while you can.
Do,
If the Conservative Party wins, I hope that things will change for the better, but I don't know. I don't know.
do you think in the long run, if the Conservatives win, eventually the Liberals will get back into power, and if anything, it buys some time?
Yeah, yeah. I think things will probably just move back and forth. I mean, I don't know. It's sad to say, but I think Canadians are going to have to get a lot more uncomfortable before they really see what's going on and really fight back and demand actual change from their political representatives. As long as they're sort of in some level of comfort, I think they'll keep going along and keep their heads in the sand.
How hard is it for you when you go back to Canada? And do you have a concern when you do go of them, I don't know, detaining you or something?
Well, yeah,
Finding
of course. This is why I'm not there now. I had a flight booked on Sunday, and then this, freezing of my bank account happened, and I canceled my flight. And I was like, I'll never go back. I don't know what they're up to. I don't trust them. I'm not going to go back and be, thrown in jail or whatever they have in store for me. So, I mean, I had been going back. When I would go back, I would avoid the city like the plague. I would maybe stay one night in the city to see my friends and go for dinner, and then I would go over to the island, which is where my family lives, and sort of hide out in the woods, which is, nice enough. But I don't want to spend any time in these urban centers at all around these kinds of people who think that murdering somebody who has different political views than them is justified.
Do you get spotted when you go to these big cities?
Yeah, people recognize me. And I'm from Vancouver. I lived in Vancouver for 40 years and I lived in East Van for many, many years. So I also just know a lot of people in the neighborhood, like I have a lot of friends or old friends or acquaintances around. But yeah, people recognize me.
Yeah, I haven't heard about much of it lately, but the swatting of some of the journalists on the right here in the United States has been really bad with Owen Schroyer. I had Dominic Michael Trippi on not long ago. It happened, I think it happened to him. Juanita Broderick got swatted.
Oh yeah,
She's in her 70s.
crazy.
I don't
What a
know.
nightmare.
I don't know,
Yeah.
Megan. I don't know where this whole thing goes. Yeah. I mean, it's like I feel like the United States right now we're in a bit of a pause with Trump back in office. What did you think when he became president again?
Oh, I was thrilled. I have dual citizenship, so I voted for Trump. And I was really thrilled to vote for Trump. And I was just excited beyond belief. I've never been so sorry about that.
That's okay.
Doggy. Heard somebody downstairs and she has to guard us. This is my little guard dog here.
That's your security.
Um,
Is that your security?
yeah, yeah. She's protecting me. Um, growling. Um, I've never been so excited about an election in my life. I was so happy with his executive orders and so happy to see this push back against these elite authoritarians who were just so entitled. They just assume they're going to stay in power because they have so much power. And after all that they did to Trump to try to destroy him, try to kill him. Um, I was just so excited to see him win, and I'm excited about his cabinet. And that's not to say that I like everything he does, but is really happy about all the executive orders around protecting women's sports and protecting kids from being transitioned and protecting women's sex-based rights in general, as well as, protections around all sorts of things, free speech. And it's just nice to see somebody challenge all of this stuff that went unchallenged for so long. And that, again, these progressives and these elites thought that they had they thought that they'd beat democracy, really. So I was glad to see that they had not.
It's amazing. I know I'm running out of time here with you, but it's amazing when I look back on that, how much the memes played a part in all of it.
Yeah, I know. The meme election. Yeah, and obviously X played a large part. People were allowed to speak freely about what was going on and challenge the propaganda that had been protected on all of these platforms for so long. I was banned from Twitter for 4 years before Elon took over for referring to a man as he and for saying that men aren't women. And I had been, completely shut out of the algorithm on every single platform. And that's, people can be like, oh, it's just social media. But again, I'm an independent writer and podcaster. I depend on these platforms to have an audience and to share my work and to make a living. And you can't do it really without these platforms. So it was a huge, huge impediment beyond the fact that it's ridiculous and wrong to ban somebody from a social media platform for saying that men aren't women. But it's a really serious thing. Like, we all operate online now, and if you can be shut down from these apps for going against, government doctrine or whatever, you're living in a very, very, very dangerous place.
Yeah,
these people pretend that they're fighting fascism, and it's right in front of their noses. It's the parties they're voting for. You're the man. You're not fighting the man. You're the man. You're supporting the man.
well, that's why it's so important to like diversify your platforms because I just started my YouTube channel 4 months ago and I already got a warning and a strike. I was put in timeout for a week.
Yeah, I got those during COVID for challenging the vaccine mandates. I don't trust any of the platforms. I've been demonetized so many times. Thank God for Substack. Most of my work goes on Substack. I put it in other places as well, obviously, but Substack is genuinely a free speech platform. I hope it remains that way. But yeah, I should actually mention for people watching, if they do want to support my work, I really appreciate it. And the best way to do that is by becoming a paid subscriber on Substack, and I'm at www.meghanmurphy.ca. Um, yeah, and people can subscribe to me on X, and right now I can't access any monetization on YouTube because it's connected to my Canadian bank account, which is frozen, so I don't know what I'm gonna do about that. I wasn't making all that much money there anyway. Not popular in the YouTube algorithm. But yeah, people can subscribe to my podcast on Spotify, which is the same drugs. That's helpful. And yeah.
Well, and I would encourage people that listen to this to go out and support Meghan and her work because she was very much ahead of all this prior. I mean, it was like COVID exposed a lot of it, right? A lot of the fuckery that was going on. But you recognize it way, way before it got banned, got debanked, canceled, left where you grew up because of it. And it's being a one man band like this. It's you need support people like Meghan because she's doing good things. So go ahead. Sorry, were you gonna say something?
Oh no, yeah, no, it's like, yeah, I mean, I think
I could keep going. You want me to keep kissing your ass for another minute or two?
Yeah, I mean, that's how my income comes through, paid subscribers. So there's no secret, I'm not getting Russia money or anything like that.
I forgot him. You don't hear about her anymore, Lauren Chen. I saw her appear at court and didn't answer, and it's the last thing I've seen from her since.
Yeah, disappeared.
Meghan, thank you so much for doing this. I look forward to continuing to follow you along. Love to have you back on for more conversations, and and we'll see what happens here soon.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Mic drop.